Husband pretends to be infertile for 40 years and you won't believe why. Jenna Carter had envisioned a future with a large white house, picket fence, and a bustling household of children when she married Gary Lewis. Though they were able to obtain the house, they were unable to conceive any children. After 3 years of trying, Jenna visited a doctor who recommended a fertility specialist. Jenna and Gary underwent multiple tests, including some that were uncomfortable. Following a month of waiting, the doctor's secretary contacted Gary for a follow-up appointment to discuss the test results in person. However, Gary insisted on receiving the news immediately over the phone. When he hung up, his face was sorrowful and he had tears in his eyes. Jenna and Gary returned to Dr. Sage's office a week later and received the disheartening news. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis," the doctor said. "The tests indicate that you are infertile and unfortunately there's no treatment available for you. While we hope to offer a solution someday, it is currently not possible." Gary was crestfallen, but Jenna took his hand and spoke up, determined to not let his condition devastate him. "Listen, Gary Lewis, I married you because I love you, and we will have a family one way or another." Jenna embarked on the arduous process of making them eligible for adoption, driven by her determination to start a family. After 3 years, they adopted little Judith, followed by Thomas 2 years later. The family was blissful, but strangers often remarked on the children's physical appearances. Judith had blonde hair and blue eyes, in contrast to her dark-haired, dark-eyed parents, while Thomas was of mixed race. People would ask if they were adopted, to which Jenna and Gary would kindly explain that they were. Jenna even confided to her best friend, "I love Judith and Thomas, but if I thought I was the reason we couldn't have our own biological child, I would be devastated." Judith and Thomas matured rapidly, and before long they were off to college, leaving Jenna and Gary alone in their large white house with the picket fence. Jenna let out a wistful sigh. "One day we'll have a brood of grandchildren running around this old house and playing in the yard, just like I always imagined." Gary chuckled. "Give them a little time, my dear. You'll have your grandchildren soon enough." Jenna eagerly replied, "Well, it can't come soon enough for me." Little did Jenna know that fate would soon bring her the grandchildren she had been yearning for. Just a week later, while Jenna was pruning her roses in the garden, a tall, attractive man in his early 50s appeared at the gate. He inquired, "Excuse me, is this Mr. Gary Lewis's residence?" Jenna removed her gardening hat as she stood up and confirmed that it was. The man asked politely, "May I speak to him, please?" Jenna called out to Gary, who emerged to meet the man. "Yes, can I help you?" Gary asked, looking at the man. The man appeared agitated and requested, "May we speak in private?" Gary declined, stating, "No, sir, you can speak to me in front of my wife. What do you want to talk about?" The man appeared even more uneasy. "Sir, do you recall a person named Rosalie Garson?" Gary's face lit up. "Rosalie? Of course, she was my high school sweetheart before I joined the military 50 years ago. Are you related to her?" The man revealed his identity. "Yes, sir. I'm Sam. I'm your son." Gary was taken aback, and it felt as though a massive hand had squeezed all the air out of his lungs. "My son!" he exclaimed. Jenna reacted in disbelief. "Liar! You're lying. My husband is sterile. You're just trying to swindle him out of money." However, Gary had tears in his eyes as he gazed at Sam. "My son," he murmured. "But why didn't Rosalie tell me?" Sam explained, "Well, sir, you were serving in Vietnam, and Rosalie married my stepfather. He adopted me, but after he and my mother passed away, I decided to search for you." Jenna stared at Gary and accused him. "Can't you see he's lying? He's a fraud." Gary shook his head and said, "No, my love, he's not. You see, 40 years ago, Dr. Sage told me that you couldn't conceive. I knew how much it would break your heart, so I asked him to tell you that it was my fault." Jenna was stunned. "It was me? I held you responsible for all these years and it was me?" "I wanted you to be happy, Jenna," Gary explained. "I wanted you to have the family you always wanted, but if you thought it was your fault, you would never have agreed to adopt Judith and Thomas." Jenna wept tears of joy and said, "Gary, I love you so much." She turned to Sam. "I am sorry. You are welcome here. I cannot replace your mother, but if you permit, we can be a family." Sam smiled and replied, "Thank you, Jenna. I accept your offer. I have 6 kids who would love to have a grandmother to dote on them, and there's another grandchild on the way. I hope you're up to the challenge." Jenna and Gary's family unexpectedly grew with the addition of one more son, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. When Judith and Thomas returned home, the house was full, just as Jenna had always envisioned it.